Hello and welcome back. Thank you as ever for getting in touch, sharing your thoughts and opinions. The best place to do so, comment section below. And if you have a longer story, maybe with some pictures, you can email hi@tuesday@dobbs.com. Your input is so essential for making these weekly podcasts. So I'm so sorry I don't get to reply to everyone, but I personally read through every comment and every message. So please do continue to do so, because without you, it would be infinitely harder to make these weekly episodes. I'm going to start this week. In fact, I'll give you a quick update. In about 8 hours' time, Monica and I are heading off to Heathrow Airport to finally head over to India for the first time. So can't wait. Behind me, or in front of me here, behind the camera, a whole load of stuff that needs to get packed, but I've cleared a little oasis here of clean to film the podcast. I'll start off with a conversation from last week. How much does it cost to keep a bike on the road? I'm not talking about Italian Exotica, some really high-end machine. I'm talking often about a winter hack, a commuter bike. What is the reality of keeping these bikes on the road? I'll start off with Mr. Vulcan. Freddy, with regards to the Honda VFR 800, valve inspection and adjustment that was quoted £1,600 last week. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I was quoted $1,000 in labour. Alone, I bought the special tools and I did it myself back at 16,000 miles. And my, is it a royal pain. I spent $500 in gaskets and shims on my 32,000 mile go-around of this maintenance process. Once it gets to that level of cost, $500 just for parts to do the valve adjustments, I'd almost rather just pay the extra, well, 500, sometimes 1,000 to get a mechanic to do it, because it can be so much hassle. This is from Alan. Alan's got a slightly different take on things, and this was mentioned a few times from Alan with regards to the Honda VFR valve check. Simply not needed. My last one, Honda VFR, did 89,000 miles. And when it was checked, it required nothing. So I've got a question for all of you. Let's say a valve clearance check, a valve service is £1,000 to £1,500, and you have just bought yourself this bike, a Honda VFR on Facebook Marketplace. So easy to find these kinds of bikes. That's £1,600. And let's say you get £100 off the purchase price. You haggle down the current owner. So you've bought this bike for £1,500. 500 miles after you've been riding it, you realise, bugger, I need to do the valve clearance service. And you're quoted £1,200. Do you spend the £1,200 and religiously stick to Honda's service schedule? Or do you think, look, the bike's only £1,500, there's no point spending the same price of the bike again just to do a service, when I know full well people like Alan, and I've heard from a lot of other people who say the same, have ridden 100,000 miles and never even looked at, never touched the valves? If it were me, and I just bought this Honda VFR, I wouldn't be doing the valve checks. I would just take my luck and hope that, look, the bike will probably be fine, and I'm going to save myself, in essence, the price of the bike on this valve check. I'd love to know your thoughts on the matter. Am I being irresponsible saying that, or is that quite a level-headed approach? Love to hear your thoughts. Moving on to Breaker Steve. With regards to a Yamaha MT-01, I needed a starter motor. I was quoted from Yamaha £750 plus fitting for a genuine part. That's for a starter motor. So I did some research and I found a matching part from Italy that had a good reputation between other owners, and I got one new off eBay for £116. I fitted it myself, and the complete cost, including 1 litre of oil, £130. So that's a £620 saving. The same bike I was quoted £450 to supply and change 4 spark plugs. Twin cylinder bike, 2 plugs per cylinder. Steve, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but this type of thing always brings me back to a plumber we had to call over here in Belvedere to the flat. The flusher for the toilet had broken and it was constantly on. Water was constantly pouring in. So I called a plumber, got him over. He said, yep, okay, we're going to have to rip out all of the tiling, completely replace the toilet, and it will cost £600. Everything needs to be replaced. After I would have paid him £600, he said, you'll then have to get a carpenter or someone to completely retile the back wall. I thought this cannot be true. So I went onto the Facebook owners group of our development, and sure enough, there was a thread there, and someone said, do not listen to local plumbers. This is what you need. It's a £15 part. This is how you replace it on YouTube. You buy the part from here on eBay, and you can easily do it yourself. So I thought, okay, come on, it's got to be worth a try at £15. Bought the part off eBay, arrived 3 days later, watched the YouTube video, took me 20 minutes to fit, and I fit the part, £15, no extra work doing. I didn't have to knock down an entire tiled wall in the bathroom. I was flabbergasted. Rant over. Moving on, UK Vamp. Freddy, I know 2 people that got rid of their Triumph Tiger 900s because they got fed up of the service costs, especially once they got the big one, which seemed to be about £1,200 plus. I've always fancied a Ducati myself, but I have to say their Desmo service is very, very expensive if done by a dealer. You're looking at £1,500 from a main dealer Ducati. On to Eddie. Now here's where things take an interesting turn. If you're looking for a good value bike from a maintenance point of view, something that's easy to maintain and cost effective as well, forget about the Japanese stuff. Forget about the stuff you thought was the simplest to maintain. You need to go over to Italy and the USA. From Eddie. Okay, I live in Spain, not the UK, but mechanics' hourly rates aren't far off back in Britain, and parts and oil cost the same. I'm going to pitch in for my Moto Guzzi V7 again. It's got 2 cylinders, 2 valves per cylinder, and my last major service, listen to this, last major service, oil change, valve clearances, adjust the clutch, total €240 at the local Moto Guzzi dealer. I'm done with 16 valve Japanese inline 4s. Think that's amazing? Frank's got something even more incredible. Over in the US, my Sportster has hydraulic valve adjustment and belt drive, so all I have to do is change the fluids and the filter. That's a 30-minute job on the driveway. I've had my Sportster for 25 years and it's done 400,000 miles on the original engine. I get 100,000 miles from a belt drive, much cheaper than a train drive per mile cost. Frank, that needs to be some kind of, or close to, Guinness World Record. It's a testament to American Harley Davidson longevity, 400,000 miles. And again, a really good point about Harley Davidson's hydraulic valve adjustment. Does that actually add a really big sales pitch to the argument about Harley Davidson's? Because you don't have to pay these big bills for the valve clearance checks. You could be saving over £1,000 a time because Harley Davidson have that hydraulic valve adjustment. That isn't an insignificant factor when considering a Harley. That's a huge, huge selling point. And the belt drive as well. I've had countless people messaging about the Moto Guzzi setup where you don't have to worry about chains and things like that. And Harley Davidson, exactly the same. Simple maintenance. I'll do one more from Australia. Freddy, I have 2 BMWs. I'll put them up here, pictured. What a pairing. It's a BMW R100 RS, 1977 model, with 185,000 kilometers on it. You can rack up the miles in Australia probably easier than anywhere else on Earth. It has, or it runs perfectly, and I can get everything I need for it, even though it's 47 years old. My other bike's a BMW R1200 RT. That's a 2013 model with 102,000 kilometers. If I ever need a new ECM for it, well, that would be $1,000 plus fitting and programming. Get a used one, I hear you ask. No, the problem here in Australia is the dealers won't touch second-hand parts or spares. See, this is the thing, Gary, it's the same in the UK as well. Most mechanics don't want to put their name to second-hand stuff. So either you buy the second-hand part, fit it yourself, or yeah, you do have to pay a lot more and just get a mechanic to do it with a used or a new part if they can actually find it. Carrying on with Gary. A bike like mine with 123,000 kilometers is worth 5,000 Aussie dollars. The cost of repair for electrical problems makes the bike financially unviable. This is the major problem with today's bikes. Gary, you're bang on. This is the thing that scares me. Have a think about it now. All of the classic vehicles, whether it's an old Land Rover Defender, a classic 1960s VW Beetle, classic Triumph or BSA motorbikes, classic Royal Enfields. You've got Jonathan in his garage tinkering away on a 50-year-old Triumph. You've got Julian who rents out a garage 100 meters down the road and he's working on his old classic VW Beetle. They're tinkerers, and the reason they can be tinkerers is because old engineering is incredibly simple. So you can open up a YouTube page, watch how to do things, watch how to change an entire engine on a vehicle, because it's all simple. You don't need a ludicrous amount of special tools. It can be done by a DIY mechanic, and that means that they can save these vehicles, they can keep them on the road. But what happens when this current crop of vehicles, whether it's cars or motorbikes, coming out in 2024, get to 40 years old? Jonathan and Julian won't be able to maintain a brand new BMW 5 Series, for example, whereas they probably could maintain a 35-year-old 5 Series BMW. It's just too complicated. You're going to have a degree in engineering to be able to properly look after these vehicles, and it means that so many vehicles won't be able to be saved because tinkerers won't physically be able to know how to save these vehicles. I think it will completely change the landscape of classic vehicles and the market for used vehicles as a classic proposition in the next maybe 3 to 4 decades. I think everything will change. On now to rock solid British engineering. This is in regards to the Triumph Legend that I was talking about last week. I expected to get almost no insight, almost no feedback from that. No one commenting on the Legend that I recommended. But I was completely wrong. So many of you, from a certain generation, really know these bikes very well and praise them highly. I think anyone under the age of 30, 40 even, has almost no idea about them. But the people that were around when these bikes came out, they rate them highly. I'll start off with Oliver. Pictures here. These pictures are so good, so enjoy the pictures as I read about this. From Oliver. Freddy, my dad, won his Triumph Legend at the BMF Rally Peterborough in 1999. Look at the pics, the 2 mullets there, look at the style, look at the bikes, the Legend on the podium. Carrying on, he and his 2 mates all bought a ticket, each for £1, as Triumph had a raffle on, and as luck would have it, my dad won. He rode the thing everywhere, from down to see his mum in London to Le Mans and all over Europe to various shows and events with our local club, the St Neots British Biker Club. And I would also go on the back of it as often as possible on as many adventures as Poss with him. At one point I remember it being his only form of transport. He would ride it in all weathers, it would never let him down, and I always had, this is interesting, I always had a love-hate relationship with it because the Legend isn't a Bonneville. And I could never understand my dad's love of the bike. But fast forward to 2020, when my dad sadly passed away, I took the bike on and also a modern Triumph Street Twin. At first I would solely ride the Street Twin and I would never touch the Legend. But then one time I dragged the Legend out and I had a ride on it and I just fell in love with it. This is incredible. I promptly sold the much newer Triumph Street Twin and I've never looked back since. I bloody love it and I wish the model would get more recognition as it deserves. I must admit, I've changed a little bit since my dad had it as more of a tourer-focused bike, but it still is the same bike with all of the memories I had on it with my dad and now making even more memories. It's got 65,000 miles on the clock and still it doesn't miss a beat. I've serviced it myself and apart from routine maintenance and checking the valve clearances, it's been absolutely spot on and it goes all right too. I've attached a couple of pics, one being my dad when he won the bike, he's the bloke on the left with the hat, and a couple more recently since I've owned the bike. Oliver there is the perfect example of the intangible element that adds to the value of the bike. Way disconnected from the financial value of the bike is the emotive element, and that bike is the definition of an extremely valuable bike from an emotive point of view. Oh, beautiful machine. On to now, this is brilliant, Charles Dale, the Coronation Street actor. Those of you who may not know Coronation Street if you're not British, it's a very long running series, one of the most popular series in the UK. This is from Charles Dale, the actor himself. Freddy, the first proper bike I ever rode, strangely, was the Triumph Legend. I also didn't have a license at the time, strangely. I was cast as an ex-builder called Dennis Stringer on Coronation Street. This is so good. But they forgot to ask me if I had a license. About 6 months later, they turned up with a brand new Legend and I got to ride around the set for a couple of years, including the 40th anniversary live episode. I fell in love with it and tried desperately to fit a test in around my filming schedule, but to no avail. I eventually left the street to go and leave the BBC, sadly leaving the Legend behind. Finally, I got round to taking my test in 2015 and I've been riding bikes ever since. Charlie, I'd love to know, you must have had someone on set to teach you. Otherwise, the nerves going through your head as they would say, right, Charlie, jump on the bike and look as cool as possible, ride into shot and then jump off. Loads of cameras filming, everyone watching, never having ridden a bike before. It's a great insight. Harley Davidson now. Moving on to what they do best. I saw this about a week ago and I was so happy to see it. For me, this is the exact kind of bike that Harley do better than anyone. They can try to get into the adventure bike sector with the Pan America, for example, and they can try and make faster bikes with the likes of the sporty Sportster. But the place that no one, in my mind, will really ever catch up to them is this kind of bike. This is the Harley Hydra Glide. From Jerry here. Freddy, just a quick note to say, there is a new Harley Davidson icon in the lineup. Oh, Jerry, I know. I know you love the retro look in some of your preferred motorcycles and thought I'd give you a heads up. The new Harley Hydra Glide has arrived and it's nice. It's very nice. Of course, this really isn't the kind of bike to travel the world on, as it's a limited production run of around just 1,700. But honestly, I think Harley have nailed it with this nostalgic throwback to the past. Jerry, I could not agree more. When I saw this in the marketing that's going around at the moment for Harley, I immediately said to myself, yep, there you go. That is exactly what Harley Davidson need to be making. This bike, the Hydra Glide, was originally made from 1949 to 57, and this is on Harley's website, to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Harley Hydra Glide. A champion of the Panhead era is resurrected with the release of the limited edition 2024 Hydra Glide Revival. I think this will be about £29,000 if I remember correctly. So it's a lot of money, but that is a lot of bike for the money as well. They've got the styling spot on. This, if they market it right, is the kind of bike I really think Harley should be focusing on, because they're so unique with what they offer in this kind of package. Jerry, I love it. On now, Bike of the Week. I'll start off here by reading Andreas's from Hamburg's email. Freddy, you compare the Honda Transalp with the Moto Guzzi V85 TT and the Yamaha Tenere 700 in your review video. Both bikes are a wee bit on the soft side of the Honda in respect to torque and performance. How would you think about a comparison with the Husqvarna Norden 901 Explorer? This one is a very vivid KTM engine inside and would be on the more potent side of the Honda, I would say. I assume that I would fancy the Norden 901, also by the looks, that round headlamp, nice engine protection and a great sound. Andreas Hamburg. You know, Andreas, I don't think I've ever mentioned a Husqvarna, ever, to the best of my knowledge. Swedish brand, they've focused on the more off-roading element of motorbikes, but this is what you get. For the base model, £12,900, and then for the Expedition model, now this is the model that's ready, set to take on the world. It even comes with panniers, bigger screen, I think a crash bar, some other things. That's £14,600. I was playing around on Husqvarna's website. I think they have one of the best marketing approaches out of any of these adventure bikes. Take a look at some of these pics. You've got the bike racing along behind a group of about 4 or 5 camels, trustworthy equipment written at the top. And then you can open up this page where it lists a few of the key points, equipped for expedition. Look at these pictures, they are stunning, made for the purpose, outside for daily business, collect new memories, and you've got these bikes just exploring the most stunning scenery. This is the blurb for the 901 Expedition. Even the writing's great. An exceptional evolution of the pioneering Norden 901. The Norden 901 Expedition is assembled with all the technical accessories necessary to make it the ideal expedition motorcycle. Designed and built to reach the most remote destinations, this technically enhanced touring machine is characterized by the distinctive color scheme applied to its ergonomic bodywork. Built for pioneers, your next global adventure starts with the Norden 901 Expedition. I like to do a bit of back research. Just have a listen to this, just before I give you the bike of the week and show you what I found. Husqvarna has changed hands more than any other bike that I can think of in my mind at the moment. I'm going to read out a few snapshots here from the timeline. 1689, Husqvarna started. I mean, it wasn't a motorbiking brand back then, but as a name associated with motorbikes, if you link it up all the way back then, 240 years ago, that will be the longest running biking name in biking. The birth of Husqvarna, 1689, started as a weapons factory. The brand evolved to produce sewing machines and kitchen appliances. Then, 1903, Husqvarna unveils their first motorbike. This is something I didn't realise. So Husqvarna is one of the oldest motorcycle brands still around. 1903, that's 121 years. Fast forward to 1960, racing success transcends into production, securing the 500cc Motocross World Championship. I watched a documentary on Steve McQueen. He always used to love triumphs for off-roading, doing the desert races. But then Husqvarna came along and really stepped up the game with the off-road motorbikes. They were infinitely lighter, so he ditched the Triumphs and switched over to Husqvarna motorbikes for all of his desert racing. On to 1977 now. Following this is where things start getting chopped and changed and just passed on to new buyer, to new buyer, to new buyer every few years. So 77 comes along, following the division of Husqvarna's production of sewing machines, chainsaws and white goods appliances. One of Sweden's leading corporations, Electrolux, acquires the brand's motorcycle segment. So Electrolux, I'm sure we've got some Electrolux stuff here in the kitchen. They make food processors, blenders, things like that. They bought a motorcycle brand. Fast forward another 10 years to 1987, they moved to Italy. Husqvarna's motorcycle division is acquired by Cagiva. I had no idea. Cagiva becoming part of the MV Agusta umbrella. All models are now produced in Varese, northern Italy. Again, I had no idea Husqvarna's were for a time produced in Italy. Let's move on 20 years now. 2007, Husqvarna's rich legacy of off-roading attracts another European entity, BMW, who acquire the brand with ambitious plans to expand their off-road motorcycle range. And I'll do one final change of hands. 6 years after BMW purchased Husqvarna, KTM purchased them. The start of a new era, 2013. Husqvarna owner KTM AG acquire Husqvarna, reuniting the two halves of the original Husqvarna brand at their headquarters in Austria. So what can I find? If I'm looking at 12,900 for the base model Husqvarna Norden, or 14,600 for the Expedition, let me just keep things low and see what I can find at the entry point into the market. Bear in mind, these bikes are only 2 years old. The Husqvarna Norden came out in 2022, so an absolute bargain you may not find, but I would argue this is quite a deal for so much bike. This is a bike with over 100 horsepower, a proper set-up, really dynamic adventure bike, and you can get one for £8,400 for just a 1.5, 2-year-old bike. I think that's a brilliant deal. And if you go onto MCN, I'll wrap it up here, but I found this really interesting. MCN gave the Husqvarna Norden 3 out of 5 stars, but owners give it 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not rounding up here from 4.8 out of 5. 5 out of 5 Husqvarna owners give these bikes. I'm going to read one of them here, just to give you an example about how highly rated these bikes are. From the owners, the most important people really. 5 out of 5 stars from Bill. This was 2 years ago. I really have no clue how the MCN tester reviewed this bike as badly as he did. Ignore the review and ride one for yourself. I test rode all of the adventure bikes, and this is pretty close to a unicorn bike that does everything really well. I also think from a looks point of view, it's unique, it's purposeful, it's got something about it. And it's a bit of exotica really, because these are not seen often. I think I've probably seen 2 of these on the road. They may well not get the attention that they deserve, because everything I've seen from the owner's reviews is exceptionally good. The marketing's incredible. The website, the photos they've taken. These bikes deserve some recognition. They look fantastic. And I'll wrap it up there. I need to now go and desperately get ready for India, so thank you so much everyone for watching this week's episode. Have a great week all, and I will see you all in the next one.